Hello there. Welcome to my show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak for November 15, 2020. It's Sunday, the Lord's Day, and it's also uh, Day of the Imprisoned Writer, November 15. As you know, writers are often seen as truth tellers, and writers who write honestly are sometimes hated by people in power or people who don't want the truth. So sometimes people try to imprison writers because they just don't want to hear the truth. But as Jesus said, um, the truth shall set you free. And so the truth is important. And there are a lot of writers willing to write the truth even if they get imprisoned, and that was the case with St. Paul. As you know, the New Testament was written by St. Paul, a lot of it. So we call that Pauline epistles. And Paul wrote a letter to different churches where he was a missionary who was instrumental in founding that church. So he's kind of giving counseling, guidance, and coaching to new Christian churches that were founded as a result of his missionary work. And obviously, Romans, this sweatshirt uh, has a quote from Romans, uh, is one of the churches where St. Paul sent his letter to the Romans. And as you know, Romans chapter 1 is the beginning of the chapter, and beginning of the chapter is the most important chapter, right? St. Paul addresses the most important issue that is facing the capital of the Roman democracy. So we are American democracy, and our capital is Washington, D.C. Rome, Roma, or Rome, um, is the capital of Roman democracy or ancient Roman Empire, which was a democratic form of government. And so, what is the most important issue facing the capital of Rome, according to St. Paul? And that is obviously addressed in Romans chapter 1. I would encourage you to go and read Romans chapter 1 to find out what St. Paul considered the most important issue in the churches in Rome, Christians in Rome, which is the capital of Roman democracy. Do you think that correlates with what is most important in Washington, D.C., which is the American democracy? Well, you make the judgment yourself. Obviously, you're a thinking individual. You have a rational mind. God gave all human beings a rational mind. Do you agree that what Romans chapter 1 addresses, what St. Paul, as a Christian leader at his time, thought was the most important issue to address to the Washington swamp or Roman swamp, the capital of the Roman Empire, Roman democracy? Do you agree that it is relevant for American democracy? Do you think there's a correlation there? And second question related to that is, do you think America's Christian leaders are addressing America's biggest problem or the biggest problem in the capital city of American democracy the way that St. Paul addressed what he saw as the biggest problem of the Roman democracy? So put another way, do you see the Pope, who is the head of the Roman Catholic Church, the cardinal or archbishop in the DC Archdiocese, the bishop of the Arlington Diocese? Do you see them addressing the biggest issue in Washington, D.C., which is basically their domain, or they are supposed to spiritually provide guidance for Washington, D.C.? Do you see them addressing what is the most serious problem in Washington, D.C.? the way that St. Paul addressed what he saw as the most serious problem in the capital of the democracy at his time. So these are questions that you should ask as a thinking individual, and you come up with your own decisions regarding that, right? You have Book of Romans, you can read chapter 1. Obviously, the first chapter in any book sets the tone for the whole chapter, or what we call it's the thesis statement or the topic statement, or it's the theme of the whole chapter or whole book. So the first beginning part is encapsulating the most important points of the whole book. So that's what St. Paul does in Romans chapter 1. Do you feel that the Pope in Rome, Cardinal or Archbishop in Washington, D.C., Bishop in Arlington Diocese, do you think they are doing their job like St. Paul was doing his job? Those are verdicts that you have to make on your own because you're a thinking individual. And so, St. Paul wrote these letters to Romans, obviously, because they are documented and written, they can fall into the hands of the authorities of democracy at the time of St. Paul, who was trying to enforce the laws of the land. And as we know, the Roman democracy did not like what St. Paul wrote in Romans chapter 1. It deeply offended them because Roman democracy had its own value system that clashed with St. Paul's Romans chapter 1, which obviously follows the value system of Christianity or true Christianity, because there are people who are fakes who are claiming they're Christians, but they're fakes, right? So St. Paul is emphasizing the values of true Christianity that is outside of time, meaning it's timeless, it's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And Romans chapter 1 emphasizes this Christian value system that is based on the New Testament. And that principle is explained throughout the New Testament, obviously. And not only the New Testament, but also the Old Testament. As you know, Christians believe that Old Testament and New Testament both are the Word of God, that it is the way that God communicates to the world and let the world know what God wants from the believers. And so Romans chapter 1 is a thesis statement emphasizing what is the most important thing to emphasize to the capital city of the democracy. And obviously, when you're talking about the capital city, you're trying to say, what should the government do, right? What is the government doing right? What is the government doing wrong? And so for St. Paul, Romans chapter 1 becomes almost like the 95 Theses that Martin Luther nailed on the church door. But at the time of Martin Luther, the whole church was corrupt and they're selling salvation. They're taking money and giving salvation. We call that indulgences. So there was a lapse in the period of the Christian church where basically 100% of the churches were corrupt. Your pastor were selling you salvation and thinking that it was the right thing to do. They're preaching that it's the right thing to do, and so 100% of the churches were corrupt at the time. That 95 Theses were nailed by Martin Luther. Not everybody were corrupt, obviously. There were those who agree with Martin Luther, but they were too chicken to kind of let their voice heard. Martin Luther, obviously, by nailing 95 Theses in the Wittenberg Church in an effort to reform the church. I mean, he was an Augustinian monk, a priest in the Catholic Church. He loved the church. He just wanted to make sure the church kind of comes back to the Bible position. But by standing against the official position of the Vatican and the Pope in Rome, like currently the Pope is Pope Francis, Martin Luther knew that he was risking a lot. And because at the time of Martin Luther, every church basically agreed that this was the way to go. And so Martin Luther was risking social ostracization from every church, 100% of the churches that existed in the world. which decided to go along with this concept. And so Martin Luther was risking a lot and was willing to obviously lose everything for Jesus Christ. But not all Christian leaders who disagreed with the Vatican or the Pope, or the fact that it seemed like 100% of the churches were in the wrong at that time, even though they personally felt it was wrong, they weren't willing to come out and risk their neck. And that's like that in any conflict. There are people who realize there's something wrong, but they're afraid to come out because they don't want to suffer personally or socially or professionally, or in terms of losing their life or losing their freedom, going to prison. So when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses on the door of Wittenberg Church, that was a form of publication, right? Publication is just you letting people know your thoughts. And one way you can do that is by posting something on your Twitter. When you post something on your Twitter, you're publishing, right? You become the author of that publication. And when Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses, he's publishing his views that's written down in 95 Theses. And we have that today, and people read it, authorities read it, and that's why they wanted to arrest Martin Luther. And St. Paul, when he sent out his letter to the church in Romans, knew that not only the church in Romans would read it, but it would fall into the hands of authorities, and there are enemies. St. Paul had personal enemies like anyone else, and some of them might have hated him enough to see him in prison, even though they are Christians or even Christian leaders. So when you publish as a writer, you're taking a risk. And St. Paul knew this, so did Martin Luther. And those of you who are publishing your views on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, many of you know that you are doing it publicly, and that there are people who hate you, or if you're a Christian, people hate Jesus or Christianity, who may persecute you because of that. But you've decided to be brave enough to publish just like Martin Luther did. So you may think of yourself as a type of Martin Luther. And Martin Luther was an unknown monk, Augustinian monk. Nobody knew him, nobody cared about him. But because of his action in publishing this, he became very famous. And if you follow Twitter of conservative individuals, they became famous because they started tweeting something that other people thought of, but they were brave enough to do that. And then they became leaders and with following, right? So in any kind of leadership, a risk is taken, right? And that's how you become a leader, because you are willing to go out and take the risk. Martin Luther went out and took the risk. And Jesus obviously took the risk because he published not in written form, but in a verbal form, right? He attacked the Sadducees and the Pharisees, which were the political parties of Jesus's time. So they're like Republicans and Democrats. So Pharisees was the ultra-conservative party, so they're the Republicans. And then Sadducees were the liberal party, so they're like the Democrats. Jesus attacked both Republicans and the Democrats. So Pharisees, the conservative party, and Sadducees, the liberal party. So obviously in the political scene of ancient Israel, and many New Testament scholars have written about this in the last century, Sadducees, which represented a liberal political party, kind of like the Democrats, have always fought the Pharisees, who represent the conservative party. And they are trying to obtain more power in the politics of Israel. So these are political groups. Sadducees were a liberal political group. It was a political party. And Pharisees are a conservative political party. So there are a lot of important books written on political activities of Jewish groups, Jewish political parties. You can read books written by the top scholars of New Testament in different countries. So you can read books about this written by Marinus de Jonge. He's probably the greatest theologian in Holland, the Netherlands, in the last century. Because we're 2020, right? We're fairly young in our new century. Marinus de Jonge dominated. So you can read some of his New Testament books on this question. You can read books written by professors at Oxford University and Cambridge University and throughout England who wrote on this reality of Pharisees being a political party, which is conservative, Sadducees being a political party that is being liberal, and they were trying to fight to obtain majority rule or control of Israeli politics. Obviously, when Jesus attacked both Pharisees and the Sadducees, it's like Jesus attacking both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and saying both of you are wrong, both of you are not good for Christianity in Israel or true religion in Israel. So that's what Jesus did. So in a sense, Jesus engaged in political activity every day because Jesus attacked the political parties. He did not attack individuals, right? He attacked the political parties, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And he even cursed at them. He used curse words like F you, in modern day usage, an F you would be exactly kind of similar to the kind of terms that Jesus used against Pharisees and Sadducees. He used the curse words of his time. So you see like Ted Cruz using some cuss words. Matt Grads using some cuss words. You see them in Twitter. And Jesus was like that. Jesus used these cuss words. Obviously Ted Cruz and Matt, they use cuss words against Democrats, but Jesus used cuss words against both conservative political party of his day, like Republicans, and the liberal political party of his day, the Sadducees. So Jesus was a politician. And that's why he had political enemies. So Jesus intentionally decided to engage in the political realm. And so people who don't know the Bible don't understand what's going on because they don't know who the Sadducees really were. They don't know who the Pharisees really were. So they don't understand what Jesus was doing. But if you read ancient history written by Roman historians and Jewish historians, they talk about the activities of Jesus of Nazareth. This is, you can find that in different historical textbooks of ancient times in Israel, in Rome. Jesus is mentioned. So because he was a political figure and he did not run for any office, an official office. I'm running for U.S. Congress of Virginia's 8th District, which is the U.S. representative position for Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. So I'm an official political candidate. I'm registered with Federal Election Commission. I'm officially registered with the United States Congress, Office of the Clerk. So I'm an official political candidate. And I'm an official national level candidate. But Jesus did not register to be an official political candidate in his time. But he engaged in political activity because he attacked the political decisions and political activities of the Pharisees and Sadducees of his time. So he was a political figure who did not run for an office. So he wasn't a politician per se, or he wasn't a political candidate per se, but he was a political individual. And so he verbally attacked them, and his disciples wrote them down. And that's where we have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, wrote down what Jesus said. And when you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, you can see that Jesus attacks the Pharisees, Jesus attacked the Sadducees. He did engage individual politicians like Nicodemus, who was a member of the Pharisee. And so we do have accounts of Jesus talking with individuals, with politicians as well. And obviously, that's why Nicodemus was a very wealthy man, because he was a politician. Often politicians become wealthy, right? Barack Obama is a multimillionaire because he went into politics. He wasn't a multimillionaire before he went into politics. So some people who go into politics become multimillionaires. They have special speaking engagements, or you know, um, they do things to become a billionaire. That's why Barack Obama is a billionaire, because he used his politics to become wealthy. A lot of politicians do that, not just Barack Obama. And that's why most of the politicians you see are wealthy, because they use their political office to become wealthy. And that was the same in the time of Jesus. So obviously, Nicodemus, a Pharisee, is a politician uh, and a religious leader. We have religious leaders running for politics. Mike Huckabee is a Baptist minister who was a congressman, and you have um, the guy running against Loeffner in Georgia, who's a reverend, a clergyman. So you have clergymen running for politics, and that's something that you're going to always see. I mean, you've seen this since the beginning of American politics. And it was like that in Israel's time, and it's like that in Europe. You have a lot of religious people running for politics, and doing political activities, holding official political positions. So that's part of the Western civilization. You can't go away from that. But it's like that in many other countries as well. In Islamic republics, you have Ayatollah Khomeini, who's a clergy for Muslim Islam, who holds a religious position, but also holds a type of political position in Iran. You have imams, like in Palestine, who hold political positions of power, official positions of power. You have Muslim clerics throughout the Muslim world who hold different types of political position that is separate from the religious function. So you see that everywhere. You can see that in Pakistan. You can see that in Afghanistan. You can see that in Indonesia, which is a Muslim country. It actually is the biggest Muslim country in the world. And Indonesians look like me because it's an Asian country. Um, and you see this in Hindu country, like in India, a lot of Brahmins are priests. Brahmin is a priestly class. So they're wealthy, but they're priests. They're priests of the Hindu religion, Brahmins. And you've probably heard the term Brahmin in the context of wealthy people in India are Brahmins. But as I said, Brahmins engaged in politics in India, for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years. And so they've gained wealth in the process of engaging in politics, and so you see, in India and Hinduism, you see a lot of clerics of Hinduism engaging in politics. And that's true in other countries as well, in other religions as well. So if you go to like tribal religions in Africa or in Latin America, people hold political power there. If you go to Native American countries, there are clerics in the Native American religions. Many of them converted to Christianity, people who are Christian, clerical positions, who hold political power as well, political offices. And so that's always been the case in Western civilization, but also in Eastern civilization. So it's universal because religion plays a very important role. And there's an intertwining of religious value system, right? Because ethics is ethics, and so values that are important in Islam as a religion is important in Iran as a country or Pakistan as a country, right? So you can see how the two are very importantly tied. And in Jesus's time, Jesus did not like the way that these politicians, the Pharisees who are the Republicans of his time, Sadducees who are the Democrats of his time, they ran the country. He disagreed both of them. And so Jesus attacked them using cuss words like, you see sometimes Ted Cruz, he's a good Christian, cursing is not a sin. I know, in America, cussing almost is treated like sin, but technically it's not sin. People wash your mouth out with soap if you cuss. Like when I went to film on Christian Academy in Montgomery County in Pennsylvania, I graduated as a salutarian, number two. Joe Garver and Mosen were number one, tied for number one. Joe had his mouth washed out with soap by Mrs. Cushing because he said like a cuss word. And that's what they did to us. If we cussed, they washed our mouth with soap so we wouldn't curse. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, especially with children, you want to make sure they say things that are are nice things to say. But technically, it's not sin to curse. Like saying "f you," it's not a curse. It's not sin. And you can't call it a sin. And Mrs. Cushing never called it a sin. New Testament doesn't call it a sin. Old Testament doesn't call it a sin. Jesus cussed all the time. And we don't think it's a cuss word because we don't live in the time of Jesus. We live in the time of now. So we have different cuss words. It's like if you have a friend from Brazil and he starts cussing in Brazilian, you don't know what the heck he's saying. If you have a friend from Spain and starts cursing at you in Spanish, you don't know what he's saying. I mean, they're just words, and so that's why you don't think Jesus is cussing, but he's cussing, so cussing is not sin, I mean, you can't call things that the New Testament doesn't call sin, right? Obviously, I recommend you don't use cuss words if you can help it. It's just we're talking about civil society, right? In civil society, you don't cuss at people. But Jesus was not a very civil person. He was like a radical. Jesus the radical, right? He attacked his opponents using cuss words. Makes like Ted Cruz look like a saint. The way Jesus treated his political opponents. But his political opponents thought he was trying to usurp their political power. That's why when Jesus was crucified, he was charged as the king of the Jews, meaning he claimed to be king of the Jews. So he was killed on the cross from the vantage point of the Jewish political leaders at the time for insurgency or for threat to national security, because he attacked the Democrats and the Republicans, and he had a massive following. So both the Pharisees and Sadducees wanted to kill him. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so these are the travails of truth sayers, right? Jesus was a truth sayer. He didn't write himself, but his followers wrote down what he said. So when we celebrate the day of the imprisoned writer today, we think about Jesus. We think about Martin Luther. We think about different individuals who are willing to stand up against power, right? Like St. Paul, when he wrote Romans 1, he offended like everybody in Rome. Because everybody in Rome thought, why is he attacking something that we accept as, okay? We're a democracy. We're going to give equal rights to everyone. So why is St. Paul getting all hot and heavy about people who we want to give equality to that he thinks is evil? So read Romans chapter 1 and try to understand what was going on in the democracy at the time of St. Paul. And compare that with American democracy. Do you think there are similarities? What are the similarities and what are the differences? As you can see, I'm an educator. I taught at UCLA. I have this University of California, Los Angeles face shield. Maybe I'll wear it. I taught history at UCLA, had undergraduate students that I taught, and my classes were so popular at UCLA that, there was a limit of 20 students per class, and there are students lined up to get into my class. And the maximum you could let in is 5 more. You don't get paid more to do it, so no one generally lets in anybody. But I let people in because people want to learn from me. Heerak, Christian Kim, the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. I'm going to give them as much opportunity as possible to learn from me. So I let students in, and students were dying to come into my classroom. So I always let in the maximum 5. And, my colleagues who were teaching at UCLA thought I was crazy for letting them in because, you have more grading, more work to do, and your pay doesn't go up. I had, a friend who, who's ethno. She wore like witch's outfit, like on the first day, and scared them so that they would drop the class, so she won't have too many people stuff to grade. Because you get paid whether you have 5 students or maximum 20 students, and I let in 5 extra, so I had 25 students. So ethno is like, I'm just going to do my own thing. I don't want to, to work for these undergraduates. A lot of academics don't like teaching undergraduates. So so they try to intentionally drive away undergraduates. So sometimes some professors speak in a monotone intentionally so that not too many undergraduates will register, because like a lot of academics, what they want to do is research, publish, um, and then go to conferences and present their paper. That's what a lot of academics, researchers want to do. So sometimes, they intentionally give boring lectures to drive people away. Especially in research university like UCLA, people don't want to be teaching undergraduates. They want to be researching and publishing, and kind of creating their dominance in the academic world. I mean, I understand where they're coming from, because you cannot become powerful and dominant in the academic world by teaching, because you teach a few people. It's your publications, presenting paper at academic conferences that make you a leader among academics, right? It makes you dominant in academia. I've published a lot of books. If you Google my name, Heerak Christian Kim, on Amazon.com, you'll see all the books that I published, academic books as well. And you can see from the books that I published, I was editor for a lot of important books, that I'm a leader among academics. Other academics see me as their leader, and so, so I'm a writer and I like to tell the truth. So I'm sure I have people who hate me because I write the truth. Whenever you write the truth, you're going to have people hate you. If you're a writer and no one hates you, then you're not a truth speaker. J.K. Rowling, I really like her. And I'm sure there are people who hate her because she's saying the truth, right? If you're not hated as a writer, then you're like pseudo writer, Obviously, you're not a truth speaker. Writers who are not hated by definition are not writing the truth. They're not controversial, because obviously truth is always controversial. You're going to have people who hate you and people who will go out of their way to persecute you, or even assault you, because you are a truth sayer, and they just hate you because you're telling the truth. And Jesus experienced that, right? Jesus experienced hatred. I mean, that's why all these politicians banded together to bring him to court, right? They're like, we need to get him to court. We need to get him to court. We need to get him to the court so we could put him in prison. You know how politicians are. They go all hot and heavy and try to use politics to imprison people who attack them politically. And that happened to Jesus. But Democrats and Republicans of Jesus's time, the Pharisees and Sadducees, they worked together to imprison Jesus and then have him killed. So he was hated by both parties of his time. There were two major parties, Pharisees and Sadducees, and they just hated him. And so, and he worked hard to be hated because he kept criticizing them and telling them the truth that they didn't want to hear. It's like Martin Luther. 100% of the church at Martin Luther's time was corrupt. These things happen in history, and everybody hated him. People in the right, people in the left, people who are independent, they all hated him. They wanted to put him in prison. That's why he hid out in Wartburg for 2 years by himself. He isolated himself for 2 years, didn't go anywhere. So at Jesus' time, I mean, obviously Jesus considered all the political parties as completely corrupt. And so, these things happen in history, they do. What can you say, right? I mean, there are other political parties at that time too, but these were the two dominant ones. It's like in America, we have Republicans and Democrats that are the dominant ones. We have a Constitution Party. We have the Green Party. We have different parties that do exist, but they're not as powerful or dominant. And so today is the day of the imprisoned writers. So we remember Jesus, who was in prison for, well, he didn't write himself technically, but his disciples wrote, but he published by speaking in public, because it's a formal publication, but it's a verbal publication, not a written publication. Um, and he was in prison for that. And so today, as we celebrate Day of the Imprisoned Writer, maybe some of you may be inspired to take the risk of being in prison and saying the truth. It's a time treasured tradition of writers who are brave enough to risk their life or risk their freedom to say the truth. In one of the Nobel Prize winning writers, Alexander Solzhenitsyn from Russia, he was sent to Gulag Archipelago because of the things he wrote. All right, he won Nobel Prize, but he spent most of his time in Gulag Archipelago, the worst prison in the world at that time. And so this is what happens to writers, who tell the truth. He might have won Nobel Prize, but he didn't have his freedom because he chose to write the truth. But he never regretted it, right? And that's the thing about writers. Writers are a special breed of people who are willing to go to prison for what they write. And that's something that shocks the people who are in power. They're like, why would you want to go to prison by saying something that's offensive when you have no way to win, right? That's because people in politics think in that way, right? They modify their positions a little bit if they think it's unpopular. So they don't really have a backbone, right? A lot of politicians don't have a backbone because they modify their position to get votes, to get donations, And so when they look at writers who stand for absolute truth and they don't budge, these politicians think of them as stupid, right? So politicians of Jesus' time thought Jesus was stupid because they're like, hey, you gotta go along to get along. Why is Jesus like rocking the boat? So the politicians of Jesus' time, they didn't understand them. Both the conservative Republican types and Pharisees and liberal progressive types in the Sadducees, Democrat types. Sadducees were Democrat types. Neither of them understood what Jesus was trying to do. Jesus seemed to love the poor people and help them. So Sadducees are like, maybe, we can work together. But Jesus keep criticizing the Sadducees, the progressives of his time, and constantly attack them and refuse to align himself with the Sadducees. And the Pharisees are like, well, Jesus is very conservative. He's like anti-homosexual, like us. And he is, Sadducees were anti-homosexual as well. Like all Jewish groups were anti-homosexuality because they follow the Torah, which is the Jewish law, which is absolutely like anti-homosexual. The Torah, Torah is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 5 books of Moses. So there weren't any Jewish groups that, were not anti-homosexuality in Jesus' time. But the Pharisees were thinking like, we're conservative, and Jesus is very conservative about his views on, keeping the law. So maybe, sometimes he seemed very conservative. So maybe he'll join our group, And so both of the groups wanted him to join their group, but Jesus refused to join both of the groups, and it kept attacking both of the groups for what Jesus considered failures, ethical failures, And obviously for Jesus, ethics is based on the Word of God or the Bible, Holy Bible, Old Testament and New Testament. So Jesus kept attacking both groups, so it just pissed them off, And that's why they tried to throw him in prison, bring him to court, bring charges against him, and then like throw him into prison, And so Day of the Prison Writer, politicians don't understand why the writers continue to write, the truth or what they see as the truth until they end up in prison. They're like, what's wrong with them? What is this stubbornness? And politicians don't understand it, And often businessmen don't understand it because businessmen are like, in order to make money, sometimes you have to like kind of keep your mouth shut and, make the customer happy. And Jesus wasn't like that at all. He never tried to make people happy. He just pushed his value system, ethical value system from the Old Testament and New Testament until he pissed everybody off. If Jesus were a salesman, he would have sold nothing. And that's why some New Testament writers write about how Jesus was a hobo, a homeless person. And if you read a Jesuit writer, John Mayer at Notre Dame University, he kind of wrote about some of that. Jesus being like, somebody from a lowly peasant stock, who really did not acquire any wealth during his lifetime, and just chose to be poor and even homeless, and like, but as in the Christian tradition, uh, giving things up for Jesus is seen as a moral value or ethical value. So you have more power when you give up things for Jesus than if you're wealthy, right? Wealthy people are rarely respected in Christianity. That's just part of the Christian religion. Just because, Jesus started the tradition of embracing poverty to be a leader. So that's not kind of big in America. Most Christian clergymen are poor, right? Except those in politics, they're kind of rich. But you see, yeah, today is the day of the imprisoned writer. And so, yeah, people don't understand why Jesus felt this need to offend everybody in his time, go out of his way to offend everybody in power, in authority, all the wealthy people. Why did Jesus do that? People in his time did not understand, so, you should read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in its historical context. Many of you read it like, outside, thinking like everybody loved Jesus. No, a lot of people hated Jesus. Majority of the people hated Jesus. Majority of the people in power hated Jesus. Majority of the wealthy people and powerful people hated Jesus because he just kept offending them, right? Yeah. So today is a special day because we can see how Jesus is very important. And Jesus hated the liberal media, obviously, because liberal media doesn't tell the truth, right? They just emphasize their liberal value system, right? So that's unfortunate because there was a period in U.S. history where journalists did not go to get a master's degree in journalism at Columbia or another school. They became journalists like even without a high school diploma. They start working for a newspaper, start writing, reporting. So a lot of the writers were very objective at that time. But the way America has developed journalism now in 2020, you go to get a master's degree in journalism. So you go through a 2-year master's program. By the time you get out, you have a perspective, right? You're kind of trained in a perspective. So, which happens to be liberal progressive perspective, like Democratic Party. So majority of the journalists come from that position because they have their master's degree from like a liberal school that like teaches them to see things liberally. And that's why we do not have objective reporting anymore in America. And I think that's tragedy for America, because journalists should be truth sayers. They should just report the truth without like trying to put a political spin on it. But today's journalists, they all try to put a political spin on it, make it liberal, because they went through like a liberal master's program in journalism. And so America's journalistic arts have gone down in the last 50 years because there was a period in American history where you don't even need a college degree to be a reporter. And that's a better time, because, I mean, the question is, do you want the truth? Is that more important to you? Or do you want people who could write better? You know what I'm saying? You don't really have to write better to be a good journalist, right? Right? You don't have to write well to be a good journalist, right? A good journalist is who reports the facts and information that we need to know, right? And so the emphasis on like formal training for journalists has ruined America's journalism, I would say. Formal training is overrated. It, in a sense, creates a lot of blind spots. We call it Johari Square, because you're trained in a certain perspective. So you develop a tunnel vision in the perspective, in which case you miss everything else that's outside of that tunnel. And so that's why today's journalism is less accurate than 50 years ago, because journalists are trained to have a tunnel vision that sees the world from a liberal perspective. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to read about Johari Square, blind spot or biases, blind biases. So these journalism have biases against conservatism. And it's a bias. Bias is a bias, whether you're biased against conservatives or biased against liberals. Bias is a bias, right? When you're professionally trained to be biased against conservatism, then you are professionally trained to be prejudiced against conservative values. So obviously, you're not going to be accurate in your reporting. There's going to be a lot of blind bias spots. And that's what we see right now in America. And that's why America is not trusting journalists, right? A lot of people do not trust the liberal media. I don't trust the liberal media because they're not reporting things. When you turn on CNN, the language they use are very, very incendiary against conservatives. They use charged language. It's more like rhetoric than journalism, right? You see the difference between rhetoric and journalism. In a sense, journalists have become politicians. And that's what I would say. And that I think that's a tragedy for America because we don't really have objective reporting anymore, in a sense, that we used to 50, 60 years ago. Yeah, so we look at today's figures. As you know, today's Sunday, so everybody's just taking a day off. It's the Lord's Day. People go to church. They spend time with the family. They go to the park. So the reporting trickles in slowly. So we don't have all the reporting of the deaths. So right now the deaths stand at 527. But as you know, it's like over 1,300 every day. Just today's Sunday. So everything comes in late, or some may even submit the data tomorrow, morning. So so that's not accurate. I'm sure we had around 1,300 deaths today too. So currently, at least with the data that we have now, the deaths stand at 246,101 deaths in America. Basically, mostly from April till now, because as you know, this show started on April 2nd. It's a daily show, and there was like 7,000 deaths. So, most of the death is from April to now. And the confirmed confirmed cases are 11,022,584. So we're breaking the 11 million mark. You see the photo there. As you know, I was the vice president of Georgetown University Graduate Student Government from May 2019 to May 2020. So I ran and I got the votes and I became the vice president. And I was like the most popular executive board member at the Graduate Student Government, which is called GradGov, from 2019 to 2020. And so, so I'm very happy with the important leadership role that I played at Georgetown University, which is a Catholic university that holds the Catholic value system. So Georgetown University follows Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John officially as a Catholic university. And Georgetown University officially follows Romans 1 as the Word of God. So obviously it stands with Romans chapter 1 officially as a Catholic university. Obviously these things are self-evident. We hold all these truths to be self-evident, right? Romans chapter 1 is the Word of God. I mean, all Christians in America consider that to be self-evident, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Like tell all the Christians in America that Romans chapter 1 is not the Word of God? We're talking about 330 million American citizens. Over 300 million of them are Christians. They hold it to be self-evident that Romans chapter 1 is the Word of God. What are you going to do? Tell them to abandon that view? Who made you God, right? So as you can see, you may want to be God, but you're not God. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so I held my leadership role as vice president of Georgetown University, and did many great things. And people love me, and so you see some of the people who enjoyed our boat cruise. We had a fun boat cruise on in the fall of 2019. This year, we did not have a boat cruise because of COVID-19, unfortunately. And Georgetown University completely shut down. All the 100% of graduate courses are online. 100% of undergraduate courses are online. There's like nobody on the campus except few exceptions. Yeah, so I feel bad for the executive board members who are executive board members from 2020 to 2021 because they're doing everything online. I mean, they're not going to experience all the fun things that we experience. So in a sense, my executive board, and I was the vice president from 2019 May to 2020 May. My executive board was the last physical executive board, and Dr. Fauci was saying COVID-19 will last until at least till 2022. Many people say it's going to go far more than that. It's a 365 days a year virus. It may be last decades. It may be forever, like HIV virus. Ever since it was discovered, it's been there for decades. Same with hepatitis C virus. So we may have COVID-19 forever. It lives in a host, and people carry it. So people don't want it to die, don't want to let it to die by isolating. So it's going to continue to exist in people's lives. And vaccines, I don't think they will work. COVID-19 is too complicated. We don't have vaccines for HIV that work. People tried it, but they just don't work. And we don't have vaccines for hepatitis C. So my prediction is that none of the vaccines will work. I was watching, Sky News show today, and they were like saying, yeah, the Pfizer vaccine, they may work in some people, they may not, we're not sure. People with pre-existing conditions, it may not work on them, we're not sure. It may last, a few days, few weeks. We don't know how long it's going to last, even if it works. You see what I'm saying? So all the vaccines that's going to be rolled out, you should basically count on them not working, Yeah, I think that's the safest way to go because scientists don't know COVID-19. It's been around for like less than a year or around a year. And it takes like decades to understand the virus, that's complicated. This is a really complicated virus, so they may need a couple of decades to understand it. So you're not going to have a working vaccine for the next 10, 20 years, And this thing's going to be around for the next 10, 20 years. So what you have now is what you're going to have for like 10, 20 years. Obviously, only one who can end this is God, because God's the creator. God created COVID. People may have created COVID, but like people create cars, but you create your babies, but we say God created your babies. You see what I'm saying? So everything is done with God's, providence, as we say in theology. As you know, I'm an expert theologian, certified expert theologian. It's, Georgetown University probably will not have a physical class for next 10, 20 years. So that's what we're looking at right now. My prediction is that vaccines will roll out. People will take it, and then they'll find out there are serious problems with it. And a lot of people are going to die from the vaccine. That's my prediction, because they haven't fully vetted the vaccines. They don't know what the side effects are. And if you give any medication, you generally look at what the side effects are, right? If you take this medication, the side effect is this, every medication has those listed. Now, the question is, what are the side effects of a COVID vaccine? Well, they don't know. You're going to find out, like you're the guinea pig. When you get the vaccine and you start having some kind of serious heart problems and you die from it, well, that's the side effect. You know what I'm saying? That's how they're going to learn what the side effects are. You're the guinea pig. So I hope they don't force me to take the COVID-19 vaccine. I don't want to take it until it's fully vetted. Like, I want to see people who took it at least last for 2 years without dying before I take it. Like, so let's say England rolls out their vaccine and some people who, trust the government blindly take the vaccine. I want to observe them for like 2 years to see if they die. Like significant number of them die or get sick. Or develop some kind of chronic condition from the vaccine. And if that doesn't happen, then I'll take the vaccine, like, 2, 3 years from now. Since COVID-19 is like forever, 10, 20 years from now, like HIV, World Health Organization talked about that. So the experts have been discussing this for a while. If I take the vaccine 3 years from now, that's fine. They would have fine-tuned it if it works. I don't think it will work for 10, 20 years, honestly, but I don't want to be the guinea pig who experiences a side effect, And today in Sky News, the expert was saying, we don't know what's going to happen with people with pre-existing conditions, different conditions. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, So I was glad he was honest, Yeah, but so I mean, anything that's not fully vetted, there's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we have top 5 right now in USA. Number 1 is Texas with 1,055,508 cases, at 2% death rate. 19,918 have died. So most of the death in Texas is from the summer. So see, COVID-19 is killing 1,000 per day in summer. So you can be rest assured it's not going to go away. It's a 365 days a year virus, and it's here forever. So my advice to the US government is to produce respirators that are next generation, which will allow us to function like relatively normally, right? That's why we need a respirator that's next generation. That's not too clunky, that will allow us to breathe and talk. Maybe they could even create one which will allow us to eat and drink safely. Or they have to figure out a way for us to do that because people are dying at the rate of 1,000 per day, even in the summer. And that's going to continue to happen here in the year 2021, year 2022, year 2023, year 2024. I mean, this is what we have now is a permanent condition. I think that's what you should think, because there's no evidence to the contrary right now. You see what I'm saying? Number 2 is California, like UCLA, right, where I taught history. California, it's it's a 1,030,749 cases with 2% death rate, 18,262 death. Most of its death came in the summer as well. Same with Florida, 885,201 cases, 2% death rate, 17,518 people have died. So so we see that problem. Illinois is number 4. So Illinois beat out New York for the 4th slot. And so 573,616 people have gotten infected with COVID, a 2% death rate, 11,162 people have died. So New York has dropped down to number 5 because their infection rates are lower. Their death rate was over 10% in the winter, but since that time, their death rate was like a 2%, so it kind of averaged out to 6%. So they have currently 560,200 cases and 34,032 deaths, most of them in April 2020. And so, this April, though, obviously probably have at least 30,000, maybe more. And then in the height of flu season, they should expect at least 30,000 every day, but probably far more because more areas in New York are infected. At that time, it was mostly the city of New York and its suburbs, but now it's like everywhere in New York. So I'm predicting that over 1 million people will die in New York by June 2021. And I think that's assessment that is accurate based on the fact that COVID-19 is everywhere. So let's go to the next page. I'm going to take this mask off because I'm getting thirsty and I want to drink my Diet Coke. See what I mean when I say we need to create a next generation mask, a respirator that would allow us to drink without taking our mask off. Because the moment you take your mask off, you're vulnerable, right? If there's COVID-19 in the air, And COVID-19 is seen as airborne, which means if you have an infected person in the room and that person keeps coughing without a mask, then that could be floating all over the air, you know? Or if that mask kind of becomes dislocated and the person coughs, just by breathing, like if their nose is exposed from the mask, and if they're breathing through their nose, that molecules coming out of their nose could be infectious as well, because when you breathe, molecules come out, right? You breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide, and COVID-19 can be carried, uh, or can be expelled in any kind of explosion from your lung, in the form of breathing or coughing or sneezing, and so it's a serious problem right now. So we're looking at a lot of infections in the winter time. Right now it's November, so we have like November, December, January, February, March, April, May, basically maybe even up to June, 7, 8 months to go, COVID. And so I'm predicting that at least 30,000 will die in every state in America. And you can imagine major cities will have a lot of deaths, in every state. And so if you have 60,000 dying in every state, it's a 6 month period. It's a long period, 6, 7, 8 months. But you have 3 million people die in America, minimum. So that's what I'm predicting. As I said, a lot of nurses will be infected because nurses take care of the patients. And so that's a serious problem. But obviously, all the nurses know that, they can get infected and die. You learn this in nursing school. So, if you went to nursing school, you know that. So every nurse who's working know that they could get infected and die. So there's no surprise if they get infected and die. They wouldn't be surprised. They'll be upset, but they wouldn't be surprised. And I'm estimating that out of the 25 clinical nurse leader master's program graduates from Georgetown University who graduated with me, well, including me, there were 25. We graduated on August 24, 2020. 5 of us would die. That's my prediction. Before Christmas, 5 of us will die. Probably more will die after Christmas. People with the pre-existing conditions can die. Nurses who work in intensive care units, emergency room, they have higher chance of getting it and die. So I don't think we should be surprised if 5 dies. Obviously, I don't want anybody to die. I love you guys. I don't want you to die. It's going to be sad, but I think we're headed toward there. You see these infections and the deaths are spiking. So I'm going to do a little cheer. CNL 2020, yay, Georgetown University, yay. So you see Healy Hall behind me and graduates of Georgetown behind me. We didn't have a graduation ceremony in May. They said we're going to have a graduation ceremony in August, but we didn't have one in August either. Obviously, because COVID-19, this thing is forever. You're not going to have a graduation ceremony in 2021. For those of you graduating this year as seniors, you're not going to have graduation ceremony in 2022 because COVID will be still around. For those of you who are juniors right now in college or high school, you're not going to have a graduation ceremony in 2023. For those of you who are sophomores right now, you're not going to have a graduation ceremony in 2024 because COVID-19 will be here. For those of you who are starting freshman year, this is what you're going to have for the next 4 years. There won't be jobs when you graduate after 4 years. I actually recommend high school graduates to join the U.S. military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, because at least you have a job. You can be trained in a particular skill, and they'll pay for you for college. If you want to go to college afterwards, you could do it 100% online while working in the job. So that's the smartest thing to do right now, in my opinion, because COVID-19 is forever. And there aren't going to be jobs. If you're an English major or history major and you want a consulting job, you're not going to have that. MBA degree is basically useless because companies will be shutting down, going bankrupt. You won't get a job when you graduate with an MBA degree. Courts are basically shut down. Law jobs are going to shrink like at the rate of 10 to 20% or more every year. You law graduates may not even get hired. So your JD jobs are probably useless right now for the next foreseeable future when COVID-19 is around. So the smartest thing to do is join the US military, get paid, get the training. If you want to do, law job or MBA later, you could always do that. But that is a survival way to go, in my opinion. And that's what I would advise you to do with your children. Advise them to join the US military. Either join as an enlisted or go to like US Naval Academy, US Military Academy, US Air Force Academy to become an officer. Or, like there are military academies that are not those, like Virginia Military Institute, or, there are different military institutes you could go to become an officer, or have a direct path into leadership position in the military, or just go enlist. If you enlist as a in the Navy or Air Force, you could be trained in like intelligence work or IT sector. You could even become a nurse in the military. You could join like the military and be trained as a nurse, or healthcare sector industry. So you could do that as a military person getting paid. So that's what I would encourage you to do. I think that's a smart way to go. That way, many of your parents are going to lose their jobs if they haven't already. So you kind of help them by going to the military. You're making money. You could save that, and you could get the training for your future job. So that's the smartest way to go. Um, Today, we'll talk about Maryland. Maryland death will spike. So that's the question. It seems so from at least the articles that we see. Maryland's cases are spiking. So obviously, once the cases spike, hospitalizations will spike a few weeks after that, and the death will spike a few weeks after that. So that's something that we're looking at. So the first article is, it looks horrible or terrible. Public health officials alarmed as coronavirus wave threatens Maryland nation. So Meredith Khan in Baltimore Sun from today. The significant quote from that is, with coronavirus cases spiking in most states, including Maryland, public health officials are imploring people to wear their masks and skip big Thanksgiving gatherings. Nationwide, more than 100,000 new cases have been reported daily for more than a week. Maryland is faring better than most, but has confirmed more than 1,000 cases a day since November 1st, and more than 2,000 Saturday. So yeah, they're spiking a lot. It looks terrible. What we're seeing is cases rising really rapidly, and so are hospitalizations and deaths, said Dr. Nilesh Kalyanamaram, and Arundel County Health Officer. Yeah, cases are rising, hospitalizations are rising, and deaths are rising. So that's something that you can expect. That's happening in every state, not just in Maryland. It's happening in Virginia. It's happening in every state. As I said, every state should expect 60,000 COVID-19 deaths minimum by June 2021. And so minimum 3 million Americans will die by June 2021. It's unfortunate, but it's a global pandemic, right? I'm estimating that 100 million people will die around the world. Europe is spiking like crazy right now. Deaths are spiking, hospitalizations are spiking, so millions are going to die in that continent. And as you know, Latin America, millions are going to die in Latin America. They're the continent of COVID-19 death. India, they had the Diwali celebration. They say something like 400 million people celebrated. They're headed to millions of death. Would you disagree with that? It's people to people virus. If you're celebrating like in close proximity, of course you're going to get it, and some of them are going to die. So yeah, India probably will have millions of deaths as well by June 2021. Second article, Maryland records 1,840 new cases, positivity rate increases. So Lauren Moses, Fox 5 News today. Maryland begins a new calendar week with 1,840 new COVID-19 cases. This comes just a day after breaking the single-day record with 2,321 new cases. Sunday is the 12th consecutive day of 1,000 or more new cases, confirmed cases of coronavirus. Hospitalization also continued to increase with 938 people hospitalized, an increase of 17 over the last 24 hours. It sounds small, but remember, it can grow exponentially. So it may be like 70 people today, it could be 170 a few days from now. It could be 1,700, like a week after that. So that's the problem, right? It's an exponential growth. It's not a linear growth. An additional 9 Marylanders have died due to COVID-19 in 24 hours, bringing the total death toll to 4,153. That's how Texas started with, few people dying, and then it went to like dozens dying and then hundreds dying, So, that's what's going to happen in Maryland too. Is deaths are going to spike, single digit death are going to go to double digit death. It's going to go to triple digit death. It may even go to 4-digit death, So that's coming in the next weeks. So that's the sad thing right now. Cases are rising, hospitalizations are rising, death will definitely rise. Yeah. The third article, as you can see, is Baltimore County teen dies from COVID-19 as cases set single-day record in Maryland. And that's by Mike Halgreen, Click 13, CBS Baltimore. And so another young person has died from COVID-19 in Baltimore County, the first new death since 15-year-old Diana Dyson back in May. So from May to May, they didn't have any but under 18 die in Maryland. Other states people have died, but now that they have this death, and we're headed to the flu season, we have 6 months or more, right? We have November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, right? So 6 to 8 months. We may have a lot of deaths. That's the problem we're looking at right now. Children are particularly vulnerable to flu season. Children die in flu season in fairly large numbers. Normally, in COVID-19, there may be far more who die just from the flu because hospitals are strained with COVID-19. But there will be people dying from COVID-19 too. Like, a lot of children are overweight. That's a pre-existing condition. A lot of children have pre-diabetes or diabetes. They could die from that. But there may be children with congenital defects, It's probably a good thing to fix congenital defects or any kind of things that they can fix, like heart valves or whatever, as soon as possible. You go to Virginia Hospital Center where I work as a registered nurse. If you get an appointment in, get that done as soon as possible. Whether you live in Baltimore or wherever, you could drive and get that done. If the appointment is available for you. You may even have me take care of you. Yeah. So continuing on in the article, the county's health officer, Dr. Gregory Branch, who is a coronavirus survivor himself, because a lot of healthcare workers are getting COVID. As I said, a lot of nurses are going to die. But Dr. Gregory Branch survived COVID. But obviously, even if you had COVID in April, you could get COVID again in December. So it doesn't mean Dr. Gregory Branch will not get COVID again. He could get COVID again in December and die in December from COVID. That's the scary thing about COVID. You could get it every year. So yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And as our flu season rises and death toll rises, there will be stories about that. People who had COVID in April, who got COVID again in December, who died from it in December. So that's coming. Yeah, so nurses who had COVID in April, sorry, you could get COVID again in December and die from the COVID in December. That's a sad thing. Yeah, so yeah. So Dr. Gregory Branch, who is a coronavirus survivor himself, told WJZ, uh, the teen had a pre-existing condition and said that the county has seen a rise in cases among young people, but their hospitalization number have not dramatically increased. Well, that's because it takes like 5 to 6 weeks for it to get worse in some individuals. So, um, I mean, their spike in cases are recent. So give it like 4 to 5 weeks. They'll have a lot of young people coming in, 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 80-year-olds coming in with very serious conditions, and some of them dying. Give it 4 or 5 weeks. Um, and Beginning Sunday, restaurants and bars must close by midnight. So they're kind of imposing a curfew. Eventually, they're going to, expand that curfew, and then, as that spike, Maryland will have to shut down. So that's what we're looking at. So obviously, the fact that Maryland had a record-breaking COVID-19 cases on Saturday, that's 2 days ago or yesterday, and very high cases today, 1,840. That should be of concern to you if you live in Maryland, and that's why University of Maryland decided to go 100% online. So they're sending all of their undergraduate students home, all of them. It's a big campus, right? They're sending all of them home. They were told to go home, like they were only giving a few days notice. Because Maryland is seeing the spike, and University of Maryland is afraid that dozens of students will die on campus, right? That would create a liability issue for colleges because parents can sue the University of Maryland for negligence in not taking care of the students according to CDC guidelines. So they could use like CDC guidelines to sue Virginia Commonwealth University, University of Virginia, or Dominion University, Marymount University in Arlington, George Mason University in Fairfax County. They could sue. The parents can sue when their child dies of COVID. Yeah. So if the universities are not strictly following the guidelines of CDC, then they'll lose the lawsuit. And not too many universities, as you know, in your university campus are following CDC guidelines, so they'll lose that lawsuit pretty easily. So, one of the fallouts of COVID-19 is that you're going to have a lot of colleges going bankrupt from lawsuits. There's so much that you can settle. If you have like 100 students die in your college, and all of them, their parents sue, even if you settle, that's quite a bit. I mean, as you know, I worked hard to shut down Georgetown University. I worked for 3 months in the summer to make sure that Georgetown doesn't open its campus. And obviously, soft power. Can I get a 5 on soft power? Can I get a 5 on soft power? Yeah. So, Georgetown, followed my leadership, and they closed Georgetown University down. So there are no students, except for a few exceptions. But like all the 100% of undergraduate classes are online, 100% of graduate classes are online. They were 100% online from the beginning of the semester because the campus shut down like several weeks before it started. So those students were brought on campus. And, I'm proud at the hard work I did to achieve that because look at what's happening in COVID-19. I mean, I predicted this. Georgetown would have had to do, if it opened campus, it would have had to do the same thing that University of Maryland is doing, sending students home. And some of them would have gotten COVID and infected with COVID, and we might have had several deaths, and so it's a serious problem, and so yeah. So I'm proud of the hard work that I did as your leader. A lot of people who go to Georgetown live in Arlington County, especially like in Boston. A lot of graduate students live in Boston. But all over all over Arlington, a lot of undergraduates live in Roslyn. When the school is open, And so, I'm proud that I saved a lot of people's lives, not just Georgetown University students, but even residents of Arlington, because, this COVID-19 can spread aggressively. So, so we've been able to keep COVID-19 down relatively pretty well because Georgetown University shut down. George Washington University did not bring any of the undergraduates on campus either. Um, and American University shut down. So that's why we don't have the crazy spikes in Arlington um, that we could have had if these universities opened up. So my hard work in closing down these area universities have saved your life. You know, yeah, as you know, I am running for U.S. Congress again for November 8th, 2022. That's 2 years from now. Because of COVID-19, everything became crazy, and my name was not on the ballot for the 2020 election. Yeah, sometimes circumstances rise, right? And COVID-19 rose like in March, and made everything crazy. So unfortunately, courts are closed in Virginia to physical, court events. Um, so it's understandable, what's going on. And so, I'm upset that my name didn't get on the ballot, but court cases have slowed, and you can watch previous episodes to follow on up on what was going on. But hopefully, 2022 will be better. We're gonna have 2 years of COVID-19, and I may run as a Republican, for primaries and then and general election. I'm a lifelong Republican, so it could be a logical thing to do. I ran as an independent for 2020. God kind of guided me that way. But let's see. So, vote for me on November 8th, 2022. We have 2 years of campaigning. Yay! So vote for me. Give me a 5 on election victory. Give me a 5. Yeah, so Harry the Owl's like, I want to give you a 5 on your election victory. Yeah, so yeah, so um, count on voting for me on November 8th, 2022. We have 2 years of COVID-19 every day of the year, 365 days a year for 2 years running into our election in November 8th. So it'll be a different experience for all of us, right? 100% COVID-19 every day of the week, 7 days a week, 52 weeks per year, 365 days a year, we're going to have COVID going into our election in November 8, 2022. Yeah, it's a new chapter, I would say, in US history. So year 2020 is a transition year. We go from like non-COVID America to COVID-19 America. But now we're in a different chapter. Uh, we are in COVID-19 America, not a transitional period, but we are actually in COVID-19 America. And for the foreseeable future, this is where we are at, for the next 2 years, certainly, but probably next 10 years, maybe next 20 years. So everything will have to change. Humans have adapted through all kinds of things to survive, um, global warming, there are continental shifts, continental drift. Things have happened in our environment that are out of our control. And obviously, many people have died, many races have died, many ethnic groups have died, but some have survived. And that's the history of humanity, right? And that's where we are. Obviously, certain groups will die. Certain nations may have 100% COVID-19 death in next 10, 20 years. Hopefully not America, but you never know. Some countries may go extinct just because people are dying, with COVID-19 in the next few decades. Um, and I don't think you should be surprised by that because that's been happening in human history since beginning of time. Whenever environmental changes have serious changes, things like this happen. And so let's see, everything is up to God. God could let this continue for decades. God's the one who controls the environment, and that's why we call it the act of God, like hurricanes, are act of God. Floods are act of God. Wildfires are act of God. Lightning is an act of God. Tornadoes, are act of God. Famines are act of God. So that's why we talk about it as an act of God. So COVID-19 is an act of God. Because it's a virus, it's a living organism that's like infecting and killing, right? I mean, there are viruses all the time, but this hasn't happened yet. But it's happening in 2020, and so it's an act of God. Um, so expect about 3 million Americans to die by June. So most of you will bury a dead person, either your child, um, maybe your husband, could be your mother. Many elderly are going to die 10 to 20 years earlier because of COVID. So if you're like 60, 70, you might have lived to 80, 90 if it weren't for COVID. But because of COVID, if you move around outside or get COVID somehow, you may die when you're 65. It's things like this happen. As I said, this is an environmental shift uh, that will shorten life longevity. Disease can shorten longevity. In normal times, I mean, what's normal, right? This is our new normal. In times where there is no COVID, individual diseases are acquired, then you can manage yourself to not acquire them. In global pandemic, it's a little bit harder to do because COVID-19 is everywhere. But this is our normal. So it's hard to talk about normal times because this is our new normal now. This is what we have for next few years, maybe next few decades. So this is our new normal. Um, so children who are born in 2020, this is all they may know until they hit 20. And they may not know anything else. So that's one possibility. I don't think any healthcare expert would deny that that's possible. I mean, some of them like to believe that that's not going to happen, but all the healthcare experts will say that could happen. You see what I'm saying? Because it's scientifically possible. So we deal with science here. There's a lot of data about viruses. There's a lot of data about pandemics. We know this is not a seasonal thing. Seasonal things could go away, but this is not a seasonal thing. COVID-19 existed with us every day since it arrived in America. So there's no reason to doubt that it's going to exist with us every day for years to come, decades to come. Unfortunately, but that's where we are. Tune in tomorrow. As you know, this is the early show. I'll bring you more information that's going to help you survive COVID-19. So tune in tomorrow. I hope that your family will be well, that your children will be well, and that you will be well. See you tomorrow. Bye.